Could we see significant change in Winnipeg leading to a major trade between the Jets and the Canadiens? Plus, could the LA Kings be inquiring on a fellow All-Star goaltender? We've also had some other trades today within the NHL, mostly involving minor league players. We got some signings to discuss, some injury updates, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to discuss today. Lots of different news items. Let's start with a few prospect signings. The Vancouver Canucks today announced the signing of a prospect that's made some good strides this year. It's a 2022 7th round pick. Is a left shot defenseman, Kirill Kudrysov, who's been playing in the Ontario Hockey League. Came over from Russia at a young age, playing in the OHL. Got drafted and has really taken some big strides this year, putting up 45 points in 60 games as a pretty solid offensive defenseman. Gets his 3-year entry-level contract. Another client of Dan Milstein and Gold Star Sports there. So we'll see how he works out for Vancouver. It's certainly a prospect that was a late pick that's had a real solid development year. So we'll see what this leads to for him. Nothing confirmed yet, but it sounds like another top Canuck prospect, Aidan McDonough, who's having a solid season in U.S. college hockey, will likely be signing once his season is over, which could be coming here soon, likely within the next week to 2 weeks. McDonough's season at Northeastern University should be coming to a close, and he's expected to sign and is expected to get an opportunity to play at the NHL level, at least for a little bit in Vancouver. And then we'll see what that means for maybe his contract status moving forward as well, because that'll be important to how many games he plays and whatnot. But McDonough should be joining the Canucks here in the not too distant future. We've also seen some trades, and the reason for that is that today was actually the American Hockey League trade deadline. So there was some shuffling around of some players involving NHL franchises. In fact, the Ottawa Senators actually made 2 deals, both moving players out off their roster. They traded Jace Hawryluk, who's been at times an NHL player, but hasn't really appeared this year. He's been traded to New Jersey for future considerations. So former pick of the Florida Panthers, has played with the Ottawa Senators a couple of times, went overseas for a year, came back. Maybe a 4th-line player in the NHL. Should be able to produce more than what he has at the American Hockey League, and it gets him a fresh start with the double system. And they also traded big defenseman Christian Rubens to the Calgary Flames for futures. And I do believe that futures is actually going to result in something going back. I do think there is another defenseman going from the Flames organization at the minor league level to the Senators as well, but haven't been able to confirm just that. But the Sens move out 2 players who don't appear to have long futures with the franchise. It creates a couple of extra contract spots. They now have 45 out of 50 contract spots filled, which leaves 5 open spots. They're expected to sign one of their top prospects and big left defenseman, Tyler Clevin out of UND. Of course, same school where we've seen guys like Shane Pinto and Jacob Bernard Docker come from. So certainly very familiar with them, former teammates. Could be one of their answers to shore up that left side of the blue line in the third pair long term. Whether or not he gets games in Ottawa this year or plays in the American Hockey League, it's difficult to say, but it sounds like he's expected to sign once his college season comes to a close. And they also have a pretty deep reserve list and more players in college, so it sounds like the Senators just want to free up some extra contracts there, maybe able to target a few college free agents as well. So this gives them some more flexibility. In that sense, we also saw another trade involving Carolina. They acquired Jack Duggan from New Jersey as well for Zach Hayes. So another minor league trade there. So that's 3 more trades involving NHL teams and minor league players today that we've seen. We've seen a few of these here recently over the past 2-3 days. Another quick prospect update as well. The Detroit Red Wings assistant GM Sean Horkoff confirmed recently that one of their top prospects, former first-rounder Marco Kasper, is expected to make the jump and play North America next season. Hard to say what his odds are to make their Wings team out of camp, but at the very least, he'll play in the American Hockey League, possibly the NHL, and see where that prospect goes. But another nice prospect making the jump. Of course, they're expected to have Simon Evanson in their lineup next year. I would think he'd have a good chance to make the NHL roster as well. A few injury updates in Montreal. Brendan Gallagher continues to remain out for another 3 to 4 weeks, so he won't likely play much more, if at all, this year. It's possible he gets in a few games at the end of the season, but not many. I think he's appeared in fewer than 30 games this year. His health the last couple of years has been very, very difficult. He's really a player that's been battered and beaten up, and he's only 30 years old too. He did play a tough style of game for a number of years, but certainly caught up to him, and we've seen a lot of regression, and injuries have a major toll on Gallagher in the past couple of seasons. We also have Kirby Dach, who's now listed officially as out indefinitely. Has been upgraded after the what they thought was like an infection, then it got changed to a lower body injury. I'm not really sure how everything came to be there, but he's out indefinitely. He's going to miss a significant time by the sounds of things. And of course, we already knew from Montreal that Arber Xhekaj was done for the year. Already had successful surgery. It will be back for training camp. Another player to watch for injuries, Dallas Stars centerman Tyler Seguin, who took a bad laceration on the legs above the knee. I believe he was seen leaving the game yesterday with, I don't know if it was more of a cast, walking boot, or whatever, but they certainly looked bad. So that's certainly concerning for Dallas moving forward, as they're certainly expected to be a pretty solid team here going for a playoff run. We also knew about the injury to Minnesota Wild forward Kirill Kaprizov. We now have a better idea of the timeline. He's expected to be out for about 3 to 4 weeks. So they're certainly going to need some other players to step up and produce some more offense if they're going to continue having a successful season and maintain their positioning in the standings here for the playoffs. I don't think they're in danger of missing the playoffs, but where they finish in the standings could certainly be impacted, and they could lose home ice advantage, or maybe even drop down to a wildcard team, which is also still a possibility until we get further along and get things more secured here for the playoff teams in both conferences. Interesting scenario in Chicago tonight. Goaltender Alex Stalock could not play due to a non-COVID related illness, and they had to end up dressing the E-Bug, the emergency backup goaltender, tonight. This was a scenario where the situation with Stalock was just too close to game time. They didn't have time to do a call-up, so he got signed to an amateur tryout and actually got dressed for the game, so that's not something you see very often. Of course, the big news earlier today was the Philadelphia Flyers fired GM Chuck Fletcher. I do have a dedicated video on the channel already, which will be up in the YouTube card, so certainly check that out if you haven't already. Fletcher's gone as president and GM. Daniel Briere comes in as interim GM. They're going to find a new permanent GM, which is expected to be Briere, but not confirmed. And then, of course, a new president of hockey ops. There's some that are saying that Dave Scott, who represents the owners with Comcast, may not return after the season as well. There could be a change in that regard too. So we'll have to see where that goes. But like I said, lots of changes are expected to continue. I think other management changes are coming. John Tortorella appears safe with his job. A letter went out to season ticket holders recently explaining where things are at, and Tortorella was the one signing. The statement from owner representative Dave Scott today also made mention of this being a multi-year effort to rebuild the franchise. So it sounds like they might finally embrace a rebuild, basically for the first time ever in Flyers history, which would be good for them to kind of go for the clean slate here. And if that's the case, I would certainly expect more deals after the season ends, for sure. I mean, certainly some future players there that are certainly questionable in their futures with the franchise. So we'll have to see where things go. But obviously, this has been long time coming. You could say multiple years in the works. Fletcher's had not had a good run in Philly. Some of it's bad luck. Obviously, the Ryan Ellis trade never worked out. He's gone through numerous coaches. But the Ellis trade, it was not really his problem per se, but at the same time, maybe there was more there medically that could have been known ahead of time. I don't know. But certainly Fletcher relieved of his duties, and hard to say who will replace him long term here, but odds are it is going to be Danny Briere. I mean, he's been groomed already to be taken over, so I would not expect another name to be the one who grabs that permanent job. Now, on the trade front today, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the rumors we could see in the offseason. For example, we did get more confirmation from the latest 32 Thoughts episode here from Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merritt that the LA Kings absolutely did inquire about Predators goaltender UC Saros. Now, of course, Saros was not somebody you would come to think of as a player that would likely be dealt. But the Predators obviously went into sell-off mode, obviously not, being happy with where the franchise was at. They announced David Poile would retire and Barry Trotz is coming back to the Preds to take over for him. So certainly that's going to be a big change. Be curious to see how he might do things differently. But it did start to make a few trades to sell off a few veteran players, move out a few contracts. I am sure they will continue to explore that market into the offseason to help this team make some necessary adjustments. I do wonder about Saros. I mean, the only reason they really consider it would be that they do, have a goaltender waiting in Askarov, who was a high draft pick and could very well be ready here soon. I mean, he's been doing very well in the American Hockey League. They could get a good return for Saros. Maybe it's something they really should consider. LA, of course, is probably not done tinkering with the goaltending situation, so we'll have to see where things go on that front. But certainly an interesting scenario to keep an eye on moving forward. And Darren Dreger talked about on Montreal radio about Montreal and Winnipeg and Pierre-Luc Dubois. Is he going to end up in Montreal or not? There's still a lot of speculation about his future. All indications are from Dreger, what I've seen from other insiders talking about this recently as well, because it's kind of come back up, resurfaced around the deadline, that Dubois is not wanting to sign long-term with Winnipeg. So if that's the case, going into one more year away from free agency, Dreger feels that there's a really, really high probability that the Jets would trade him this offseason so they don't get into a real awkward spot where they have any chance of losing for nothing as a UFA. Of course, he's been publicly known that he wants to go to Montreal. He's expressed this between what he said himself, what his agent had said publicly, and many feel that it's inevitable he will end up there. Of course, Montreal could wait a year and sign him as a UFA. But at the same time, Winnipeg is going to want to trade this guy and get something in return. We could see significant change in Winnipeg because, of course, Scheifele's future there in Winnipeg. Even Blake Wheeler's future has some uncertainty around it as well. So you have to think that the Jets are going to be having conversations about who to re-sign, who needs to go, what changes they need to make. But if there's a possibility that Scheifele and Dubois both won't sign and they decide to both walk, that's going to be very problematic for Winnipeg. Of course, they could trade them before it ever gets to that. But if they have to move them and both guys do not return, you have to wonder about Connor Hellebuyck next. I mean, he's an all-star goaltender and largely responsible for a big chunk of their success. And will he want to be a part of that team any longer if they're going to really be taking some big steps back, losing their top two centermen? It's going to be a major blow to that team. So it's really difficult to say. But from Montreal's standpoint, they do have a lot of draft currency. They do have a lot of young prospects that would very much intrigue Winnipeg. But I would think that the Jets are going to want an established top six centerman of some sort going back the other way. And that would be very tricky for Montreal to do. They're certainly not going to trade Nick Suzuki or Cole Caulfield as much as a given. So what else do they really have on their roster that's established players that would be able to step in right away? That would be difficult. I mean, obviously it'd be a big deal for Winnipeg to lose Dubois and or Scheifele, but certainly makes a lot of sense that we could see that blockbuster deal involving the Habs and Jets this offseason. Like I said, it could be a pivotal year, a transformative year, possibly for Winnipeg if they end up having to lose Dubois and Scheifele, and it could be a pivotal year for Montreal if they are even making this kind of a big trade as well. So, going to be interesting. I mean, really, I know there's a whole crowd there that thinks Montreal should wait, sign him as a free agent, but then again, they can get him sooner. He wants to go there sooner. Will we see a trade? If we do, I'm not sure the return is going to be as good as many fans are going to want, though, given the fact that Dubois technically has all the leverage and say where he wants to sign, where he'll go, and he won't waive it otherwise. So I would suspect that we're going to see, maybe not the greatest return, but they do have lots of young prospects that would be intriguing for Winnipeg for sure. So let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.